Hello, my name's Gary Schotten, and I'm here with you as a part of Inspiring Better Business. And today I'm going to talk to you about the subject of resolving conflict. Man, if you're in business for any length of time, or if you're just in life, you've got to admit there's going to be conflicts. And learning how to resolve those, or how to get through those, or how to go on with life when you do have a conflict is going to be crucial for your success as a business owner. I'm not talking about just something that's wrong, but when you know that somebody on the other side of the fence, on the other side of the business deal, is upset with you. That's what I mean by conflict. And how are you going to resolve that? How are you going to go on with life? I guarantee it will happen. It'll probably happen several times a year, if not several times a month, if you're in business actively. Now, first of all, number one, I believe that you pretty well know when there's a conflict, but if you don't, just being around that person, you're going to feel uncomfortable with them, or they're going to feel uncomfortable with you. They may avoid returning a phone call, or they may avoid being with you at different times when it's normal to be with you. And I think you're smart enough to know and pretty well pick up when somebody doesn't appreciate something that's happened. And you're in conflict. Maybe no words have been said, but at that point, you know something's wrong. You better be sharp enough to pick that up and maybe put yourself purposely in that person's presence to see whether or not they are maybe holding a grudge against you for some reason. So knowing it is going to be the first step in resolving it. Oh, occasionally you might have something happen out of the blue. Somebody comes up and you're just so surprised that they're really upset with you. But that's not normally the case. Number two, I believe that the earlier you deal with something, the better. It's not going to go away, typically. Some people take an approach that they just bury their head in the sand, or they're going to believe it goes away, and still years later, that individual that you were in conflict with is holding that in, holding that against you, or holding that inside themselves. It's hurting them as much as you. So, the earlier address it, the better. And I think you're responsible to go forward to address it in a professional way. That's what I'm suggesting. Do you know somebody that's in conflict with you now? Are you afraid to go talk with them? Do you feel uncomfortable around them? Just think about that. How are you going to resolve that? Well, when you get into it, I'm going to give some examples of how something happened just recently. But when you start talking about the conflict, you might start out with something like, hey, I noticed that we're not really hitting it off so well. Is there something that's bothering you? Or was that deal that we talked with a couple weeks ago, is that settled, or is that behind you and me? Can we go on with life? And you know what, that right away they're going to give you an indication. Oh no, everything's fine. I've just been busy. It's a little depressed on something else. Hey, forget about it. Everything's fine. Well, then you're good. But if that point you start talking about whatever happened to cause this conflict, I encourage you not to dig down into the details. Digging down into the details is probably, in my opinion, just going to make it worse. You're going to hear things like, well, you said this, and I said this, and boy, what you said was this. Who cares what was said at that time? You're going to have to fess up and say, I'm sorry. I apologize. I come to you with an apologetic attitude to say, what can we do to make it right? How can we get past this? I want to be your friend. I want to be your business associate. And I don't want this conflict to be going on for a long time. Let's get it behind us. What can we do to settle it? I'm encouraging you to be the one to come forward and address it once you know there's a problem. And then don't relish and dig down into all the details. Take responsibility. That's what I'm saying. Take responsibility to come forward and discuss the issues. And, you might not feel like you're at fault. You may have plenty of reasons to feel that you've been wronged. But there's no reason to let a business endeavor, a misunderstanding, to be a hardship that ruins your friendship and ruins your freedom to be around that person. Let me walk through some examples. This actually happened. You won't know the name. I'm not going to share a name, but it was to do with somebody that was a friend of mine, and that person did some work on a project that I had. And you know, it didn't go well. And I was pretty upset, to be honest with you, that it didn't go well, and that there wasn't an effort on that individual's part to resolve that project, and I ended up getting someone else to finish the job that this other person had started. They didn't finish the job. I paid them in full, the full invoice amount, but I was going to have to pay some extra to get what I feel need to be fixed that the first individual did not accomplish. And so I'm with this individual on a weekly basis. There's a reason for us to rub shoulders. And I noticed this individual was holding their distance from me. And I let it go for a couple weeks. And then it became obvious. I said, hey, how's it going? And there wasn't a reply. And I approached the person and said, listen, what can we do to resolve this? I apologize because we should have never got into this position. We should have never gotten to the position that any business thing is going to cause us to lose our friendship, lose association. And so let's resolve this with the reality that I could have done things differently, and I'm happy and pleased to apologize for what has got us to this point. I didn't actually necessarily say I believe that this other individual was right and I was wrong, but for sure the way I handled it got us to this point, and it was delicate for a bit. And this person then came, made an appointment, came to the office, and I knew he wanted to dig into the mud and the details, and I said, you know, why would we dig into it? I'm sorry. Let's go on. Let's forget about it. Let's be friends. Let's go on with life. That's what I suggest. The Word of God has something to say about this as well. In Romans 12:18 it says, if it is possible, as much as depends on you, live peaceably with all men. Wow, that says it all. Well, I'm going to do a little meddling here when it comes to just you and your spouse if you're married. I'll tell you what, if there's not a reality of if you're working in business with your wife or your husband, your spouse, there's going to be conflicts between the two of you. And I can remember sometimes, this happened to be years back, I'm not saying I don't have any more conflicts, but I'm getting a little better at it. And I was so mad at my wife, I could hardly see straight. For whatever happened, I don't remember what happened, it doesn't matter. I was upset. And we happened to go to bed that night, and we're laying there, and you could have cut the tension in the air because we're not touching each other, we're a distance apart, we're not saying anything. And with everything in me, it took all the guts I had to say, Cindy, I'm sorry. I'm wrong. The way I handled that situation was totally ineffective, totally wrong, and I ask you to forgive me. Would you forgive me? And you know what? Just like a balloon popped, the tension left. I had handled it wrong. There's no question. You've handled it wrong if you allow any conflict come to the point that you're going to disrespect each other and disassociate with each other. Fess up to it, take responsibility for it, do it quicker rather than later. Don't relish in the details. Don't dig back. Oh, you said something 14 days ago or 14 months ago or 5 years ago. I know people that they're still mad at somebody 7 years later. They haven't talked to them, and they're family. That shouldn't be. So I encourage you to conflict resolution is a critical issue in dealing with business. And you just well get kind of good at it because you're going to have some conflicts. I'm just telling you, you're going to have conflicts. You just well practice. And the more you practice, the better you're going to get at it. And I don't mean to be just humble pie and take a beating and be overly humble and be walked on. I'm not saying that. You know, if you handle it correctly and that person will not forgive you, that's on their shoulders. That's up to them. And, you know, that might be a friendship you do want to distance yourself from if you're dealing with somebody in that regard. Well, I hope this helps you. Hope this is beneficial. I hope you enjoy Inspiring Better Business. We're here to help you, we believe, by sharing base truth that's going to face all of us, no matter where we are, what continent we're in, what language you speak, what culture we're from, we'll all have conflicts, and we just as well learn how to deal with them. Thank you very much.